I've always known my sister Mia would get whatever she wanted. It didn't matter if it was the latest fashion, a shiny new gadget, or even a place at the family table. If Mia wanted it, Mia got it. End of story. The way she flaunted it, as if she were the only one in this family worthy of attention, had never been subtle. And today, of course, was no different. "That's a beautiful car, Emma," my mother gushed, her voice almost syrupy as her hand caressed the sleek, deep blue paint of Mia's brand new Mercedes. "You deserve this after all your hard work." I stood off to the side in our driveway, arms crossed tightly over my chest, watching the spectacle unfold like I had for years. It was always the same with Mia, always the center of attention, always the favorite. And always the one who got a pat on the back for doing the bare minimum. Mia flashed her newly acquired keys, dangling them like some shiny treasure, making sure everyone noticed the glow of her new toy. Her smile was wide, sparkling with the kind of satisfaction only the truly spoiled can possess. My heart clenched as I watched, knowing full well what she was about to say. "Isn't it perfect?" she squealed, her heels clicking against the asphalt as she strutted around the car. "The dealership said it was the last one in this color. I had to have it." Of course she did. Why wouldn't she? It wasn't as though she needed to earn anything in this family. Mia had always been the golden child, the one who could throw a tantrum, and our parents would cave. It didn't matter that I'd spent the last 5 years slaving away at a low-paying job while trying to juggle school. No, Mia needed a luxury car for her first real job out of college. It didn't matter that I had already been accepted into several top business schools. It didn't matter that I had been working my ass off to secure a future of my own. What mattered was that Mia wanted it, and Mia got it. "Of course I did," she added, flashing a smug grin, completely oblivious to my simmering frustration. She continued to admire herself in the side mirror, lost in her own reflection. I stood there, silently fuming. I couldn't even bring myself to smile. Not for her, not for them. Mia, with her extravagant tastes and her "I'm entitled" attitude, had always been the focus, while I had worked tirelessly to prove myself. "Don't look so sour, Olivia," my mother scolded, clearly noticing the tightness in my jaw. "You know Mia needs a reliable car for her new job. This is her first real step into the corporate world." Ah, yes. The prestigious position as a junior marketing assistant at my father's company. Of course, it had all been arranged for her. The perfect job, the perfect car, everything lined up just the way Mia liked it. As for me? Well, I'd been working in the mailroom for years, clawing my way up through the corporate ranks, learning every corner of the company. But none of that mattered. "You're right," I managed to say, my voice almost flat. "Congratulations, Mia." She barely glanced my way, too preoccupied with the selfie she was taking with her new car. "Thanks. Maybe if you work really hard, you can afford one too someday." The laugh from my parents rang in my ears like a symphony of mockery. They didn't see it, of course. They never did. It was just funny to them, watching Mia remind me where I stood in this family's hierarchy. The one who had always been second. The one who had always worked harder, but never received the credit she deserved. I could feel my fists tightening at my sides. I needed to get out of here. It was the only way to hold on to any shred of my sanity. "I should go," I muttered, turning on my heel. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." "You work too much, Olivia," my mother chimed in, as if it were something I had to apologize for. "It's not healthy. Don't you ever take a break?" I swallowed a bitter laugh. "Someone has to," I said it under my breath, barely loud enough for anyone to hear. But they weren't listening anymore. They were already planning their evening out for dinner to celebrate Mia's newfound success. I could already hear her voice carrying across the driveway as I slid into my sensible used car. "Maybe we should get the interior reupholstered in white leather," Mia was saying. "The black is so boring." I smiled faintly as I started the engine. Let her have her fun, I thought. Let her bask in the attention, in the luxury, in the fantasy that she was the queen of the world. In 3 months, everything would change. They wouldn't even see it coming. But I would. Because while they were busy celebrating Mia's promotion and her new car, I was busy laying the groundwork to take everything from them. The next 3 months would be mine. The more I watched Mia bask in our parents' attention, the clearer it became that this was nothing new. She had always been their shining star, their little princess. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how many hours I spent sacrificing my own happiness for the future of this family, it was always Mia who got the praise, the rewards, and the adoration. It was as if my entire existence was meant to be nothing more than a backdrop for Mia's spotlight. "You know, Olivia," my father said, glancing in my direction with a slight frown, "you should take a page from Mia's book. She knows how to prioritize the important things. Look at her now, taking charge of her future." I could feel the words stinging even though I didn't let them show. The subtle way they dismissed everything I had worked for, the honors I had earned, the internships I had secured, and the endless nights I had spent juggling college and my job. It didn't matter. What mattered was that Mia had the right connections, the right look, the right everything. I had the grades, I had the work ethic, but in this family, that wasn't enough. It wasn't about merit. It never had been. "Your sister is going places, Olivia," my mother added, as though this was some kind of revelation. "I just know she's going to make us proud." I bit my tongue to keep from saying anything sharp, but it didn't matter. The words, the judgment, the favoritism, those things weren't new. They were a constant, a background hum that had shaped everything I'd known about my family. Mia's desires had always come first. She wanted the best clothes, she wanted the best college, she wanted the best job. Everything had to be tailored for Mia. And if something didn't fit into that picture, it was brushed aside. Like me. The worst part? They never even questioned it. No one asked why I had chosen to work my way through college instead of taking a handout, why I had spent late nights in libraries studying for exams while Mia was out enjoying parties and shopping sprees. They never asked why I thought my career was worth more than what they were giving me. They just accepted that Mia's choices were the right ones, because Mia wanted them, and that was enough. "Olivia," my mother's voice broke through my thoughts, sharp with a note of concern, "why do you look so upset? You know Mia needs a car she can rely on for her job." I swallowed hard, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Of course, it's just the perfect car for her, isn't it?" I said it as neutrally as I could, but it felt like my words were dripping with bitterness. "Well, yes," my father chimed in, clearly proud of himself for arranging this perfect gift for Mia. "It's the smart decision. You know, Emma wasn't exactly going to use her college fund for something worthwhile." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just stood there, a hollow ache in my chest, as I watched my father smile at Mia, the same smile he used to give me when I was a little girl. Only now it wasn't me who got it was her. And suddenly I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to stand in this driveway while they made decisions about my life that didn't even consider my input. They didn't see me. They saw Mia. Always Mia. Before I share what happened next, the moment that left an entire room of journalists in stunned silence, I want to connect with you, my amazing viewers. Where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever had to fight for something you believe in, hit that like button, because this story is just getting started. I took a deep breath and turned toward the driveway, pushing all the anger and hurt down, far down where it couldn't surface. "I should get going," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." "You work too much, Olivia," my mother said, her voice laced with concern, but there was an undercurrent of judgment too. "You should learn to relax a little. It's not healthy." I couldn't help it. I let out a small laugh, though it wasn't one filled with humor. "Someone has to," I muttered, not bothering to wait for their response. As I walked toward my car, a car that was sensible, practical, and most importantly mine, I could hear Mia's voice carrying through the driveway, already thinking about ways to improve her new car. "We should get the interior reupholstered in white leather," Mia was saying. "The black looks so boring. I want it to stand out, you know." I smiled to myself, a hint of satisfaction bubbling up inside me. Let her have it. Let her have her luxury, her blind confidence that everything will always fall into place for her. I had bigger plans, they wouldn't see it coming. But in 3 months, everything would change. This was just the beginning. And my family? They wouldn't even know what hit them. For the next few weeks, I kept my head down. I wasn't going to fight them anymore, not with words anyway. The disappointment, the sting of being invisible, it was all too familiar. But beneath that, something else was growing inside me. A quiet fire, simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to ignite. I was done trying to prove myself to people who would never see me for what I truly was. No, it was time to make them see me, whether they liked it or not. I had my own plan. One they never saw coming. It started years ago, when I was just 19. I had been sorting mail in the company's back office, minding my own business, when I came across something that changed everything. It was an envelope addressed to my father, but the name on the return address caught my eye. Stanley Wright. The man who helped found Carter Industries, the company my father had inherited and nearly run into the ground with his obsession with nepotism. He'd sold his shares long ago, after financial trouble had left him with nothing but a sinking reputation. My father had long since forgotten about him. But Stanley was still very much in the picture, or at least, he had been. I could have dropped the letter off on my father's desk, let him deal with it, as I had done with thousands of other envelopes. But I didn't. I slipped it into my bag and took it home that night. The letter was a plea. Stanley was dying, he needed money for medical treatment, and he wanted to sell his remaining shares in the company. Shares my father had no idea even still existed. It was a desperate move, one that I knew could change everything, but only if I played my cards right. So I did what any smart, determined person would do. I called Stanley myself. What followed was months of quiet negotiation. I spent every penny I had saved from my part-time jobs, dipping into my small inheritance from my grandmother, just to be able to make this deal happen. It wasn't easy. Stanley was reluctant, and I had to earn his trust. But in the end, I became the buyer. A quiet, unseen player, working in the shadows to buy up shares in the company that my family had long considered their own. By the time I turned 20, I had acquired 15% of Carter Industries. But I didn't stop there. Over the next few years, I hunted down every last minor shareholder, former employees, anyone who was willing to sell their stake in the company. I did it all through a holding company I set up with the help of a lawyer I trusted. Every dollar I made went into buying more shares. Slowly, steadily, I built my stake, piece by piece. Last month, I finally hit my goal, 51% ownership of Carter Industries. I had done it. And no one, not my father, not Mia, not anyone, knew a thing about it. The paperwork had been filed, the transfers completed, and in just 3 months, the shareholders' meeting would reveal everything. My father, so blind in his favoritism, had never even suspected. I couldn't wait to see their faces when the truth came out. The thing that made all of this so satisfying was that none of it had been handed to me. I had built this from the ground up. The company that my father had taken for granted, the legacy he had nearly destroyed with bad decisions and lazy leadership, was going to be mine. I would fix it. I would restore it to what it should have been all along, built on hard work, merit, and integrity. The idea of Mia, so oblivious to everything that had been happening in the shadows, only made it sweeter. She thought she had it all figured out, didn't she? She thought she was untouchable, protected by our father's influence, his blind devotion. But she didn't know the first thing about the company, about the people who kept it running, or about what it really took to lead. I received a text from her the other day, just as I was finishing up at the office. "Don't be jealous," she wrote. "Maybe if you hadn't wasted so much time in the mailroom, you'd have something to show for yourself, too." I didn't even bother to respond. Let her think she knew everything. Let her believe her shiny new car and her position at Carter Industries meant something. I had bigger plans than her petty jabs. I tucked the phone back into my bag, stood up from my desk, and glanced around my modest office, the one that Mia would never have to set foot in. The one that had once been the space of someone who'd wasted time in the mailroom, learning the ins and outs of the company while she played at business school. But I wasn't done yet. Before this journey was over, Mia and my father would realize exactly what they had overlooked. The only thing standing between me and my future was a meeting, one that was just around the corner. And when the shareholders walked into that room, they would see who the real leader of Carter Industries was. This was just the beginning. The real power was mine, and soon enough, they would all know it. The day of the shareholder meeting arrived, and I could feel the tension in the air the moment I walked through the doors of Carter Industries. I'd spent years meticulously planning for this moment, years of watching, learning, and building something my father had no idea was even happening right under his nose. And now, the time had come to reveal everything. The look on my father's face when the board members began filing into the conference room said it all. He was trying to hold it together, but I could see the cracks forming. The realization that his daughter, the one he'd dismissed for years, was now holding the cards, holding the power. "Olivia," he greeted me, his voice tight, like he was trying to control the storm brewing beneath his skin. "I didn't expect you here today." I could hear the frustration in his voice, and it felt almost satisfying. It was a mix of confusion and disbelief that he couldn't even hide anymore. I smiled at him, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Of course I'm here," I replied calmly. "It's my company now, after all." His face went white at the words, and for the briefest moment, I almost felt sorry for him, almost. "You've got some nerve," he muttered under his breath. He tried to compose himself, but the panic in his eyes was undeniable. "You can't just walk in here and take over. This company, this legacy, it's mine. It was never supposed to be yours. You've spent your whole life in the background. You're nothing but a shadow." I stood there for a moment, letting his words hang in the air like a challenge, but I wasn't going to back down. I never had. "No, Dad. You've spent your whole life taking shortcuts. You've used your position to push people down, to build a company that wasn't based on merit, but on who could kiss your ass. And that's why Carter Industries is falling apart. But you wouldn't listen, would you? You thought Mia, of all people, was the future of this company." His face twisted with anger at my words, but I didn't flinch. Not this time. This was my moment. "Mia?" he spat. "Mia doesn't even know the first thing about running a company. She has no vision, no understanding of what it takes. But she's my daughter, my blood. She's got what it takes to carry the name forward." I let out a small laugh, barely louder than a whisper. "What she has is a fancy title, and a brand new car. That's it. She hasn't earned a thing. You've handed her everything. And I've earned my place every step of the way, from the mailroom to the boardroom, from the ground up." I saw the flicker of disbelief in his eyes as I spoke. He was still trying to process it, still trying to make sense of how his daughter, the one he thought he could control, had beaten him at his own game. "Enough, Olivia," my mother interrupted, her voice laced with desperation. She stepped forward, her hand resting lightly on my father's shoulder. "You don't understand what you're doing. You can't just take over everything like this. You've been so focused on your own ambition. This is a family company. It's always been about the family." I stood silent for a moment, letting her words settle. "It's always been about the family," I repeated slowly. "But which family, Mom? Yours? The one that's always put Mia first? The one that's ignored my efforts, my sacrifices?" She stepped back, her face softening with a hint of regret, but it was too late for that. The damage had already been done. I turned back to my father, watching him closely. He was still reeling, his mind struggling to catch up with the reality of what was happening. But he was running out of time. The meeting was starting, and the board members were already in their seats, watching this entire exchange with growing interest. I walked calmly to the front of the room, every step echoing like a drumbeat of finality. My father and Mia followed me, their faces a mixture of shock and anger. They had no idea what they were walking into. Before I could speak, Mia piped up, her voice filled with indignation. "You can't do this, Olivia. You're not even qualified. You've spent your life in the mailroom, and now you think you can just waltz in here and take what's mine." I turned slowly, locking eyes with her. "What's yours?" I asked, my voice ice cold. "Mia, you've never worked a day in your life. You've coasted on our father's name, on his mistakes. You've done nothing but show up, get handed everything, and think that makes you entitled to run this company. It's a joke." The silence in the room was deafening as I turned back to face the board. They were all watching now, waiting for me to speak, and I wasn't going to disappoint them. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," I began, my voice calm and clear. "Thank you for your time today. I'm here to make things right. For too long, this company has been mismanaged, run into the ground by nepotism and poor decisions, but that ends now. As of today, I am the majority shareholder, and I am taking control of Carter Industries." I glanced briefly at Mia and my father. The look on their faces was priceless, utter disbelief, mixed with the kind of arrogance only someone who had never truly worked for anything could possess. "And you, Mia," I continued, my tone softer now but no less cutting, "will need to prove yourself like everyone else. No more handouts, no more shortcuts. If you want a future here, you're going to have to earn it." The board members exchanged glances, and for the first time I saw the beginning of respect in their eyes. I was no longer the invisible daughter. I was the leader. I turned back to my father, my gaze hard and unwavering. "You've been given a chance to change, Dad. But you didn't take it. Now the future of this company is in my hands, and if you want a role here, you're going to have to accept that. No more favoritism. No more handing positions to people who don't deserve them." There was a long, tense silence before my father finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I replied. "The shareholders have already spoken." With that, I turned back to the board and began outlining my vision for Carter Industries, a vision rooted in hard work, transparency, and merit. It was time for change, and nothing, not even my father's legacy, was going to stand in my way. This was just the beginning. The storm was coming, and I was ready for it. The moment the meeting was over, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The room had emptied, but the weight of what had just happened lingered in the air like a thick fog. My father, Mia, and the rest of the family were left behind, fumbling to understand the magnitude of what had just unfolded. They had no idea how deep my roots ran in Carter Industries, how carefully I had cultivated this moment, how long I had planned for this day. I walked out of the conference room, my steps deliberate, each one reinforcing the power I had just claimed. The truth was finally out, and I could feel the shift in the atmosphere around me. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was standing on solid ground, not just in my family's shadow, but as the one who held the future of the company in her hands. The weight of the responsibility was heavy, but I embraced it. I was ready for it. In the days that followed, things started to fall into place. I took control, not just of the company's direction, but of the entire culture that had been poisoned by years of mismanagement. I started by making small changes, things that wouldn't be immediately noticeable, but would lay the foundation for something much bigger. I implemented merit-based policies, promoting people who had been overlooked for years. I sat down with long-term employees, listened to their concerns, and earned their trust by showing them that I was there to help, not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Mia, on the other hand, didn't know how to handle it. She was still clinging to the idea that everything would work out for her, that somehow our father's influence would carry her through. She was used to being handed everything, used to the world bending to her will. But things were different now. I made it clear, no more shortcuts, no more special treatment. If she wanted a place in the company, she was going to have to prove herself. She didn't like it, of course, but I wasn't going to back down. I could see the frustration in her eyes as she struggled to find her place. She was lost, floundering without the safety net she'd always relied on. And every time she came to me for help, every time she asked me to make an exception, I reminded her, "Earn it, Mia, like everyone else." As for my father, I could see the cracks in his facade deepening. He was still reeling from the shock, still in disbelief that I had outplayed him. It was hard for him to accept, but I didn't care anymore. His time had passed. He had squandered his chance to lead Carter Industries, and now it was up to me. But it wasn't just about revenge or proving a point anymore. As I walked through the halls of the company, I felt a sense of clarity I had never known before. This wasn't just about taking control from my father. This was about restoring what Carter Industries had once been. This was about building something that would stand the test of time, something based on values that had been long forgotten. I wasn't here just for myself. I was here for the company, for the employees who had given their lives to this place, for the legacy my grandfather had built and my father had nearly destroyed. I had a vision, a clear, unshakable vision, and now I was determined to bring it to life. I started implementing changes, strategic moves that would put the company back on track. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew it would take time. But I also knew that I was the one to do it. And for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged in this role. This was my destiny, not just as my father's daughter, but as the one who would save Carter Industries from itself. One night, after a long day of meetings and decisions, I sat alone in my office, staring out at the city below. The lights of the city seemed to stretch endlessly, like opportunities waiting to be seized. I could feel the weight of everything I had done, everything I had built, and everything I still had to do, but I was ready. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from the shadows. I was standing in the light. I was leading. And I knew then, without a doubt, that this was just the beginning. The real work was ahead of me, but I wasn't afraid. I had fought too long, too hard to let anything or anyone stand in my way now. This company, Carter Industries, was mine, and I was going to make it great again, for everyone who had ever believed in me, for everyone who had fought alongside me, for the legacy that was worth fighting for. The world was watching, and I was going to make sure they saw what I could do. The day of the board meeting arrived, and the tension was palpable. I could feel it in the air, thick and heavy, like the calm before a storm. Today wasn't just any meeting, it was the one that would change everything. This was the moment when I would finally prove that I belonged at the helm of Carter Industries, and I could see it in my father's eyes. He knew what was coming. Mia, on the other hand, was still holding on to the belief that somehow she would be rescued, that our father's influence would shield her from the inevitable. As I walked into the boardroom, I could see the eyes of the shareholders and executives shift toward me. Some of them had already started to accept the changes I'd made. Others, though, were still on the fence, unsure of what the future would hold under my leadership. I could almost hear their whispers. Would I be able to maintain the company's success? Could I live up to the expectations that came with the responsibility? But I wasn't worried. This was my time. The room was set up exactly how I wanted it. The documents I had painstakingly prepared were laid out in front of each board member. Detailed financial reports, charts, projections, and a comprehensive plan for Carter Industries' future. Everything was there. Everything was in place. And there was no turning back. My father was already sitting at the head of the table, his hands clasped in front of him. He looked uneasy, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. Mia sat beside him, her face painted with the same look of arrogance that had gotten her so far in life. But I could see the cracks in her facade, too. She didn't know what to expect, and it was starting to show. She kept glancing at me, as if waiting for me to make a misstep. "Olivia," my father began, his voice steady but with a hint of frustration. "I'm not sure what you think you're doing here. This company is mine, and I built it from the ground up." I stood tall, unwavering. The words didn't sting like they used to. In fact, they only fueled my resolve. "Actually, Dad," I said, my voice calm but firm, "you inherited it, and then you nearly destroyed it with bad decisions, with favoritism, and with people who only cared about their own agendas. Carter Industries has been running on fumes for years. It's time for a change. And I'm the one who's going to lead it." Mia scoffed. "You don't have the experience to run this company. You don't know what you're doing. You've spent your whole life in the mailroom, while I've been out there making connections, building relationships." I glanced at her, the words falling from my lips like a challenge. "Connections? Is that what you call it? Mia, you've never worked a day in your life. You've been handed everything, and now you're sitting here pretending like you're entitled to take control." The room went silent. I could feel the eyes of the board members on us, and for the first time, Mia faltered. She didn't know how to respond. She didn't have the words to defend herself, and I wasn't about to give her the chance. Turning to the board, I continued, my voice steady and full of conviction. "You've all seen the numbers. You've seen the state of the company. Our profits have been slipping, and key employees have been leaving. But I have a plan, a real plan, one that will bring Carter Industries back to life. And I'm not here to ask for your approval. I'm here to tell you that this is happening, whether you like it or not." I could see a few heads nodding in agreement. The board members who had been on the fence were starting to lean in, paying attention. They were starting to see the value in what I was saying. Mia's face turned red with anger, her eyes flashing with frustration. "You can't just do this, Olivia. You don't have the right." I smiled, the corners of my mouth curling ever so slightly. "Actually, I do. I own 51% of Carter Industries, remember? I'm the majority shareholder. And the board just voted unanimously to support my appointment as CEO. The future of this company is in my hands." Her jaw dropped. She couldn't even speak. And for a moment, I saw the reality of it hit her. She wasn't the golden child anymore. She wasn't the one who would be protected. I had built this company from the ground up, and I wasn't about to let her waltz in and destroy everything I had worked for. My father stood up abruptly, his face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "You can't just take everything from me. I'm your father. You owe me." "No, Dad," I said softly, not backing down. "You owe me. You owe me for every time you ignored me, for every time you overlooked my hard work, for every time you made Mia feel like she was the only one who mattered." Carter Industries wasn't built on favoritism or handouts. It was built on hard work, and I'm the one who's going to restore it. The room was still, the tension thick as we all stared at each other. The air was heavy with the weight of everything that had led to this moment. But I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. "We gave you everything," my mother finally said, her voice trembling. "We gave you a family, a place in this company. Why are you doing this?" I met her gaze, my heart heavy but my resolve firm. "No, Mom, you gave Mia everything. You never gave me the chance to prove myself. But I've already proven it. I'm here now. And I'm in charge." I turned back to the board, the finality in my words leaving no room for argument. "We're moving forward. Today, I'm making the changes that need to be made. We're restoring Carter Industries to its former glory, and we're doing it together. But the old ways, the nepotism, the favoritism, those days are over." The board members, some hesitant, some relieved, finally nodded in agreement. And just like that, it was done. I had won. I walked out of the room, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the halls of the company. Carter Industries was mine. And this was just the beginning. The days after the boardroom showdown were a whirlwind. It felt like I had stepped into a new world, one where everything was finally falling into place. I wasn't just the new CEO of Carter Industries. I was the one who had saved it. I could feel the weight of the company's history on my shoulders, but it wasn't a burden anymore. It was a responsibility I was ready to bear, and I wasn't about to let anyone forget it. I spent the first few weeks meeting with key employees, rebuilding trust where it had been shattered. I listened to their concerns, addressed their fears, and began to implement my vision. The changes I had planned were no longer just ideas in a notebook, they were happening. Slowly but surely, the culture at Carter Industries started to shift. No more shortcuts, no more favoritism. Hard work, transparency, and merit were now the foundation of everything we did. As for Mia, well, she didn't take kindly to my new approach. She'd always been used to being handed everything. But now she was facing the reality of having to prove herself. The looks she gave me when we passed in the hallways were cold, filled with resentment and disbelief. She couldn't understand why I was doing this, why I wasn't just letting her walk in and claim the position she felt entitled to. But I wasn't going to make exceptions for her. If she wanted to work here, she was going to have to earn it. And deep down, I knew that hurt her more than anything. My father, too, struggled to accept the changes I was making. He would occasionally show up at the office, asking questions about decisions I had made, questioning my methods, but I didn't back down. I knew what I was doing, and more importantly, I knew why I was doing it. Carter Industries was mine to lead, and I wasn't going to let him, or anyone else, stand in my way. The real turning point came one afternoon when I walked through the halls of the office, just like I had done so many times before. But this time, it was different. The air felt different. The people who passed me weren't just colleagues, they were my team. The ones who had stuck by the company even when it seemed like there was no hope left. The ones who were now starting to believe in the future I was building. I entered the conference room, where a group of employees had gathered for a meeting. As I sat down, I could feel the shift in the room. They were watching me now, not as the daughter of the man who had run the company into the ground, but as the leader who had finally stepped up. There was respect in their eyes, and it was something I had never felt before. Over the next few months, I began to make real changes, strategic partnerships, new product lines, and even a reinvention of our company culture. We started offering more opportunities for professional development, bringing in fresh ideas, and revitalizing the marketing and sales departments. The stock price climbed steadily, and slowly but surely, investors began to trust me. Carter Industries was turning around, and the old wounds that had plagued the company for so long were starting to heal. But it wasn't just about the company. It was about me, too. For the first time in my life, I was standing tall, knowing that I had earned every ounce of this, the struggle, the sacrifices, the years of being overlooked. Everything had led to this moment. And I wasn't going to waste it. It was late one evening when my father came into my office, unannounced, his face somber. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching me as I worked. Finally, he spoke. "I never thought I'd see the day," he said quietly. "You've done it. You've turned this company around." I didn't respond right away. I just kept working, letting the silence linger. Finally, I looked up at him, meeting his eyes. "You could have done it too, Dad. If you'd listened. If you hadn't let your pride get in the way." He nodded slowly, a look of regret crossing his face. "I made mistakes," he admitted, his voice heavy with years of unspoken truth. "But you've done something incredible. You've done what I couldn't." I let that sink in for a moment. Then I spoke again, my voice calm but unwavering. "It's not about what you couldn't do, Dad. It's about what we can do now. And I'm going to make sure Carter Industries thrives. This is just the beginning." It wasn't easy. It wasn't supposed to be. But as I looked around my office that night, I realized something. I had done it. I had earned this. Every decision, every long night, every sacrifice, it had all led to this. I wasn't just the CEO of Carter Industries anymore. I was its future. And the future was bright. I looked out the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to smile. It was a small victory, but it was mine. This company was mine to lead, and no one, not even Mia, not even my father, could take that from me. Months passed, and the changes I had set in motion continued to ripple through Carter Industries, transforming it in ways that I could only have dreamed of when I first took control. The company was no longer just a place where people worked. It was a thriving, dynamic entity that was beginning to regain its place at the top. The staff was energized, the investors were confident, and the clients who had once begun to doubt us were now coming back, eager to see what we would do next. I could see it in the faces of the people who passed by my office each day. There was a new sense of pride in the air, an electricity that had been missing for so long. I had built this from the ground up, and it wasn't just about the financials or the metrics anymore. It was about something deeper, something more profound. It was about restoring the integrity of the company, about making sure that every person here had the opportunity to succeed based on their merits, not their last name. It was about creating a culture where hard work mattered, where everyone had a seat at the table, where leadership was earned and not handed down through bloodlines. But even as the company flourished, I knew my journey wasn't over. There was still so much more to do. We were expanding into new markets, innovating with new products, and pushing the boundaries of what Carter Industries could become. I had a vision that went beyond just making the company profitable again. I wanted Carter Industries to be a symbol of what true leadership could achieve. A place where the next generation of leaders would come from, a company that valued substance over style, merit over connections. I looked at the long-term plans I had on my desk, the blueprints for the future. The next few years were crucial. I needed to make sure the systems I had put in place would continue to work even when I wasn't around. This wasn't just my success, it was a collective success, and it had to endure. In the midst of all this progress, I found myself facing a familiar challenge. Mia, now having to work her way through the ranks like everyone else, had started to reach out to me again. She wanted a second chance. She was desperate to prove that she could lead, that she could be the one people looked to. But things had changed. I had changed. The old dynamics between us, her entitlement, my invisibility, no longer held any weight. I met with her one afternoon, just as the sun was starting to set, casting a golden glow over the city. She sat across from me, her posture rigid, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "Olivia," she began, her voice tentative, "I want to make things right. I know I've messed up. But I want to prove myself. I want to show you I can be part of this company too." I looked at her, my thoughts clear. I had been where she was, once, not long ago. I knew what it was like to want to be seen, to want to be more than just a footnote in someone else's story. But the difference was, I had earned my place. And if Mia truly wanted to prove herself, it had to be on her own merit. "I'll give you a chance, Mia," I said finally, my voice steady. "But it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to work hard, just like everyone else. No more handouts. You have to earn your spot here." She nodded, a faint sense of determination replacing the uncertainty in her eyes. It wasn't going to be easy for her. She was used to being handed things, to being the one everyone catered to. But if she was willing to work for it, if she was ready to step up, then maybe she had a place here after all. As she left my office, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Things between Mia and I would never be the same, but they didn't have to be. We were no longer competing for scraps, no longer fighting for attention. We were two women carving our own paths in this world, and that was something I could respect. I turned back to my desk, where the next phase of my plan was waiting. The world was changing, and Carter Industries was changing with it. We were more than just a company now, we were a movement that would inspire others to believe in themselves, to believe in the power of hard work, and to know that they too could take control of their own destinies. My grandfather had built this company on the principles of integrity, hard work, and community. My father had nearly destroyed it by forgetting those principles. But I was rebuilding it, brick by brick, and I would make sure it stood for something greater than any of us. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who had helped me along the way, everyone who had believed in the vision I was working toward. It was about the legacy we would leave behind. And as I looked out over the city, the future stretching out before me, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The best was yet to come. And with that, I smiled, ready to face whatever came next. And so, after all the struggles and challenges, Olivia finally took control of Carter Industries. She not only triumphed in the power struggle with her family, but also restored the core values of the company. Carter Industries was no longer just a business empire. It became a symbol of relentless effort, where people were judged and promoted based on their skills and hard work, not their name or privileges. Mia, though initially resistant, came to realize that things could no longer be handed to her. Slowly, she started her own journey of proving herself through genuine effort. The relationship between the two sisters would never be the same, but it was a new beginning, one where Mia had to earn her place, just like everyone else. For Olivia, the road ahead was still filled with challenges, but for the first time, she was leading with the confidence and determination she had always deserved. She had rebuilt Carter Industries from the ground up, and now, the future was hers to shape. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about incredible journeys of resilience and power, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Join me on this exciting ride, and let's continue to explore stories that inspire and empower. Drop a comment below and let me know what part of Olivia's journey resonated with you the most, and share it with friends who need a little motivation.